Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. Joining me today would usually be the governor of the great state of real estate here in Texas, but he is on another due diligence assignment. That would be Mr. Michael Becker. So joining me today in the podcast for a very dynamic conversation, James the Professor Ang. James, how are you?
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me.
And then Ricardo Hinonosa. Ricardo, how are you?
Doing good.
So we're living through very interesting times. We're trying to bring people together to invest in multifamily, especially with this new bill that President Trump had signed to try to bring in, what is that? What's the big bill have? What's the number one thing for commercial real estate people, investors to consider?
Bonus depreciation.
Oh yeah, bonus depreciation, something that came out with the Jobs Act a number of years ago in 2017, and a lot of people use that to get fired up to buy commercial real estate. So we're going to talk a little bit about that on August the 22nd. James, what's going on August 22nd in Dallas, Texas?
Yeah, so besides it being 110 degrees, we will be on a bus, an AC bus, August 22nd, which is a Friday. So go to oldcapitalpodcast.com, and basically we're going to start in the classroom. It'll run about 2 or 3 hours, and we're going to take you through sort of the history of multifamily and sort of how we got to where we are today in today's market. And then we're going to get on a bus and go look at probably 2 or 3 properties that we have financed recently, talk to the ownership groups that bought those properties, and then we'll probably go see a couple properties that are for sale in today's market and talk to the listing brokers about sort of the price that they want, the cap rate, and what the value add is on the deal.
Thank you, James. Also, what's coming up in October too? We forget always to talk about that, but it's the number one event for Old Capital.
Yeah, it's a big event, October 8th and 9th. We have it up here in North Dallas. So the happy hour is going to be Wednesday, October 8th over in Legacy West. And then October 9th, we rented the FC Dallas soccer stadium all day Thursday. And so that's our big event that'll have, 300-400 people there, really for guys who are interested in DFW, multifamily, even all throughout Texas. So we'll have, pretty much every listing broker, lender, property manager, general partners, limited partners, everybody there at that event. And a lot of times, I was listening to a podcast from a group that basically came out of the ground out of the last recession. And the interviewer asked them, "So how did you find your first investor?" "Well, I was speaking on a panel at a conference, and that's how I found my first investor." I know a lot of people out there are just getting started, and some people have got some skeletons in the closet and they've got to sort of work through existing legacy issues. But for the people who are just getting started, new guys who have sort of seen the last couple years and now they're thinking, this is my time, well, come on out to the conference and start meeting the folks that you need on your team.
It is just a huge networking event where we'll introduce you to folks that maybe you don't know that should be on your team, introduce you to possible limited partners. If you are a limited partner, want to find a general partner, we'll make the introductions for you. So come see us in October. Go to oldcapitalconference.com, oldcapitalconference.com. James, Ricardo, again, you guys have not really been briefed on this, but I want to share, I would think maybe a little bit of a controversial topic, but I went in and I asked ChatGPT, because everybody uses ChatGPT these days, what are the 10 crappy things commercial real estate investment sales reps do to their clients? Let's just say that it didn't hold back, and neither will we. If you've never listened to the Old Capital podcast, we're a commercial real estate lender based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We've closed thousands of commercial real estate deals over the last 30 years. We've seen it all, and we know exactly where the brokers drop the ball. So I want to do kind of a mini claim versus reality breakdown using ChatGPT. And it gave us 10 bad broker habits. And I'd love to run each of these through James Ricardo. So with a little help from AI and a lot of real world experience, here are the 10 worst things CRE, commercial real estate investment sales reps do to their clients. And let's confirm, are these fair criticisms, outdated stereotypes, and stuff that we still see in the market? Well, stay tuned. This list might hit a little too close to home for some of our friends. So again, I put it into ChatGPT, came up a little poop emoji. Crappy things commercial real estate investment sales reps do to clients. Number one, push high commission listings. Recommend properties with inflated price tags or off-market deals just because the commission is higher, or focus on volume and fee size that generally a good investment for a client. Is it a good investment for the client? Do you see that, James or Ricardo, in the marketplace? Are you seeing brokers push for the highest commissions on these deals?
I mean, a lot of times you don't know how much brokers are making on these deals, honestly. It's sort of wrapped up into the price, right? So a majority of the listings out there, that's sort of between the seller and the listing broker, what they're going to pay. So it could be maybe 1% on a large deal and then go up to 3, 4, 5% on a small deal. And you really don't know what the commission is going to be. And we've even seen some commissions where they might have sort of a minimum that, hey, you need to get to, let's say, $10 million. Anything above 10 million, it's all you. You as a buyer don't really know what the commission is going to be on these transactions. But, as we talk to listing brokers, I want to say, let's say there's been 100 listings this year in DFW. Probably half of those have actually traded. Brokers, after doing 20 tours in the sun and going through call for offers and best and final, if they don't think the seller is going to actually get a number that they want or that they'll trade at, then it's sort of a useless process, right? And so I think the more important thing in today's market is really like brokers choosing listings that they can actually think they can sell.
Makes
and at what
sense.
price.
Makes sense. I'm gonna keep going. So number 2, overinflate valuations. Brokers present an unrealistic cap rate or pro forma income with aggressive rent assumptions, or use the broker pro forma fantasy instead of showing current net operating income, the NOI. Ricardo, are you seeing a lot of overinflated values on these properties in the Dallas-Fort Worth market from the investment broker side?
I would say in our market, one of the things about our market is it's one of the most transactional markets in the country, and it's very competitive. We have a ton of great brokers in this market that do a lot of business. So I would say brokers do try to, when they're winning it, trying to win a listing, there's a lot of competition. So they're trying to leverage their relationships, leverage kind of their place in the market. And there could be some inflation there to try to win a deal. But the other thing is a lot of the sellers here in this market, especially on sizable deals, are pretty savvy. So, I think the market kind of works itself out a little bit. I think right now, and what we've been seeing is it's not really the brokers, it's more the sellers. We've had this big gap between buyers and sellers where brokers sometimes have a feel for where the deal's going to trade, but the sellers aren't willing to go there. So they're going to list it at what, where the seller tells them to list it. So it's I don't know here recently if it's been the brokers or more on the seller side in terms of that gap in pricing.
I think the brokers are more realistic. I
Yeah.
think sometimes the sellers are unrealistic on what they think. They're still looking through the rear view mirror on valuations that were 2-3 years ago. Not what is, if the deal has to trade today, they should be talking about what's actually trading today and what cap rates and where the location of the property is at, what type of impact is it. If it's a flat roof, 2-pipe chiller property, it could be a Class C property, it could be 7.5% cap rates, and so that's a concern. Okay, number 3,
Paul, on the second page of the OM, it always says at the bottom, do not rely on these estimates. at the
Let's
back
say
of the
that.
package. So when you look at your pro forma, there's usually a couple asterisks behind the underwriting, and usually the revenue is taken all the way up and the expenses are taken all the way down. So do your own underwriting on these deals. That was it.
All right. Failure to disclose conflicts of interest. Brokers sometimes act as dual agents, representing both the buyer and the seller without truly explaining what that means for the buyer. Or they push properties owned by related entities, their firm or a relative or a friend without disclosing the connection. Or in commercial real estate, we usually don't have buyer's representation. This is a major difference between, say, residential and commercial. The sales broker represents the seller only. It's unusual to have a buyer represented broker in a transaction. So I think that could be a conflict. Buyer has no representation at all. James, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that buyers coming into the market, they think that the listing broker is on their side. It's really the listing broker is working for the seller because the seller's paying them. And so a lot of times your team members that you bring along on the buyer side, whether it's your property management team, your engineering contact, your lender into the deal, those are the people who are on your team really, who are acting as your buyer broker, quote unquote, more so than the listing broker. I guess just figure that out up front and make sure you have the right team when you're touring these properties and making offers.
Ricardo, anything more to add to that?
No, I think James hit it 100%. You've got to have your team. So for the new folks, that's where the challenge is. For experienced folks, they have their team in place. So this is not an issue. But I think it's for for the newbies that are on the first, second deal, it's very important to have your team buttoned up front.
Number 4, hide physical or legal issues. Brokers sometimes downplay deferred maintenance, structural issues, or zoning restrictions, or they skip over environmental or title concerns that could tank the deal later. Have you seen brokers do that at all, James or Ricardo?
Well, I would say what's what's the phrase I'm looking for? It's almost like if you don't ask, nobody's going to tell you anything.
Right.
So if you don't ask about the roof, no one's telling you the age of the roof. If you don't ask about the pool, if you don't ask about the age of the boiler, nobody's telling you that stuff. So all the pictures are always going to look great on the OM. And not until you go out there and actually walk the property and take a look around the corner and see who your neighbor is and what's going on next door will you know. Like in terms of title and legal and all that stuff, it's the same thing, right? You're gonna have to have a good attorney on all the legal stuff and making sure that in terms of the PSA and the title commitment, those things are buttoned up. But then also on the physical side, who's walking the property with you, who knows the history of that property, right? And knows stuff about what the seller's done, what their history is, and making sure that you have the correct people because the listing broker is going to be there to tell the positives, but you need somebody also there to tell you a little bit about the history of what's going on at that property.
Ricardo, any additional consequences or words?
Yeah, no, I think the brokers are there to do their job, right? They're there to maximize things from the seller side. But like I said, in this market, I don't know that I've ever had an issue where I felt the selling broker was intentionally hiding something. It's there for you to figure out, right? So
Yeah,
I think,
I haven't seen that very
yeah,
much. I mean, it all comes out in the wash anyway, and then
yeah,
that person gets flushed out if they are too much of a whack job on the investment sales side. The broker's going to find that out and they're going to be gone. So they don't want, and nobody wants to bring in legal issues to between transactions.
yeah.
So number 5, hide or misrepresent expenses. Brokers use understated expense ratios in the OM to make returns look better, or they leave out things like reserves or management fees or capital expenditures or tenant improvement allowances. You've seen that, have you, James, or have you not seen that?
I think the most important thing is you're gonna have to underwrite your own pro forma. So no matter what the lender underwrites, no matter what the appraiser underwrites, no matter what the seller did and his brother-in-law did, doesn't matter. How are you going to run the property when you take it over? And I think the biggest thing is figuring out your CapEx budget probably on a lot of these properties. So what we're running into is, most people who bought deals, let's say in 18, 19, 20, 21, they thought they were going to hold the deal for 3 years, and now it's been 7 or 8 or 9 years. And so it's just getting a little bit longer. So making sure you have enough money for the CapEx on a lot of these properties is where people are running into issues.
Ricardo, anything about misrepresenting expenses?
No, just know that, the CapEx piece, the P&Ls that get distributed do get scrubbed, right? And they want capital expenditures below the line. So that's where, especially on the older assets, when you're dealing with boiler systems or chillers, you don't really know what they've spent historically because it's all below the line. So again, the your due diligence has got to be there.
I'd also say that, people that are selling apartments, which is opposed to people that are selling cars, at least a car seller, a car dealer, those people they bought a car when they were 16 and they probably have gone through 2 or 3, 4 cars before they go out and they sell you a car. So they have a little bit of a general idea how the cars work. But in apartments, a lot of the investment salespeople, they're good at selling, but they're not good at owning. So they don't really have a background or knowledge of how these properties actually work. And so they'll use industry averages. They'll figure out, sometimes they'll just use what the seller's giving to them and they won't scrub it. But just like Ricardo and James said, is that it all comes down to you and how you and your property management team are going to operate this property. So it's up to you. Don't rely upon the seller or the guy who probably doesn't own a multifamily property that he's selling you a multifamily property. We're halfway there on this one. Number 6, skimp on due diligence help. Brokers sometimes push the client to close quickly without time for proper due diligence, or they disappear when things get complicated during lease audits, title reviews, environmental reports. Ricardo, I'll ask you, have you seen that at all, trying to push people to get into a contract quick or not having a number of days of due diligence? Or is that just part of the game? They're working you.
No, I think for the most part, you're going to have a due diligence period. Now, I think we're the whole piece of when your money goes hard during due diligence, that is a definite negotiation. And that's where things, where you've got to be competitive as a buyer and know where the market is. But in general, in this market, you're going to have, your 21 to 30 days of due diligence. The question is, at what point does your money go hard? And it's either day one, or you've got a little bit of an access agreement, a few days on the front end, or a lot of times the seller or the sales broker will say, hey, do your due diligence up front, go do an exterior access for a couple of days, and then your hard day one. It's more of where is the market and where's the competition and what does it take to win the deal. But right now, more than ever, the seller and the sales broker want your money hard as soon as possible because they want to know that you're committed to the deal.
Yeah, in 21 and 22, you probably had to go 500,000 to $1 million on these large deals day one, and you didn't get anything because there was 20 people knocking on the door. So nowadays, you can take all the time you want. Go do your due diligence, go do your thing while we're negotiating the PSA, and then you've got 100, 200 maybe, depending on the size of the deal, maybe half day one and then half in 30 days or something like that. Like it's definitely more, especially on the BNC side, it's more favorable to the buyer right now than the seller.
Number 7, gatekeep access to deals. Sometimes brokers withhold good listings from certain clients, only feeding them to the preferred buyers or insiders, or they treat new investors as second class unless they're winning or writing big checks or they are repeat clients. James, what do you think about that? The gatekeep.
I think this is the most ironic thing in this game that only some people get is there are some clients that overpay brokers. So what I mean by that is if a broker wants 1%, they pay him 2%. And there's some people, if the broker wants 1%, they pay him 0.5%. The guy who overpays the broker usually is getting first access to that deal. And some buyers get that and other buyers will never get that. So I think that's my 2 cents on that. I mean, there's a lot of these deals. If it's a listed deal, they're going to go through the process, call for offers, best and final, and then come down to the last two or three. But what I like to say also is you want to be a buyer that gets the first call and the last call. So the first call being before anybody sees it, and the last call being, do you want to buy it at $32.5 million, right? And the next guy's at 32.4. So you want to put yourself in that position where you're getting the first and last call.
Ricardo?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, brokers aren't like holding deals back or not showing them to people. It's who do they have relationships with and who do they want to do business with. So you've just got to get on that list. You've got to build the relationships. It's a small market, even though, we're one of the larger markets. There's, for in the BNC space, there's probably a handful of brokers that control most of the deals. And the number one job is to build relationships with the individuals that control the deal flow.
Yeah, I think, Paul, I can't remember what conversation it was this week, but I think there was a broker who, the buyer went back and asked for a retrade on the deal. And, let's say it was $100,000 back to the seller. And the seller said, I'll give you 50. And the buyer said, I'm not doing that deal. And the broker said, I'll throw in another 50 to make it happen. So when you ask brokers to cut their fee, they usually don't send you the next deal.
Michael Becker says commercial real estate in this form or fashion is an unfair business. So the guy who's done 50 or 60 transaction like Michael Becker and SPI, they're going to get the first call from the broker because they've earned it. They have the stripes in their sleeve. They've earned it. So if you're just brand new, you may have to overpay for the property just to get into the game to a certain extent. Number 8, price just to win the listing. Brokers sometimes tell sellers their property is worth way more than the market just to get the listings, or obviously this wastes time, poisons the buyer's expectations, and leads to failed marketing campaigns. And again, I think we've seen that on some people. What's your take, guys? Have you've seen the brokers trying to buy the market and just waste people's time?
Well, I mean, usually when a deal comes out, the first question everyone asks is, what's the whisper price? And then usually they take the NOI divided by a whisper price. If it's a C deal and you're trying to sell it on a 5 cap, you're going to get 0 tours, right? And so, a deal today, let's say a Class B needs to be probably 5.5 to 6, the Class C 6.5 to 7. And so if a broker prices the deal at too low of a cap rate, then no one's going to go tour it. And I mean, it's the same thing in our business, right? So if someone comes to us and they're like, it's a $10 million property, what can my loan amount be? And we can tell them 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, 8 million. What's my interest rate? Well, I can tell you 4%, 5%, 6%. And people do it on the lending side too, right? They promise the world and then you sign it up and then 45 days later you get retraded. And so we try to tell people, based on everything that we know, this is the most likely scenario that you're going to get on your loan. So they can underwrite that and they don't overpay, right? Whereas some mortgage brokers and lenders will tell you, yeah, we can get you $8 million and you pay 10 when the deal is actually worth 9, right? So we try to underwrite the deal as close as possible to what it's going to actually be done at so that you're not stuck in that situation.
Yeah, I think the best brokers are really good at educating the seller on kind of where the price needs to be in order to maximize the result versus just kind of a pie in the sky number. And you'll see the brokers that have a long track record, do good business, usually are priced right or have a good strategy on, hey, we need to price it here so that we can then move up a little bit, towards the end of the listing. But it does happen.
Ghost you, number 9, ghost you after closing. Brokers offer no support with leasing, property management, or repositioning once the deal is done. Or they refuse to help on an issue that arises post-closing, even if it was something that they misrepresented. Are you seeing the brokers disappear? I don't. I mean, not in the world that we're in up here in North Dallas. James?
I think in our space, the brokers have been around for a while. And so a lot of even the sellers on a lot of these deals, maybe not so much. Maybe some of the guys who bought in 21 and 22, they might not be around. um, to if you're trying to do a reconciliation of your property taxes that you overpaid or something like that. But I think for the most part, listing brokers are, you can usually track them down on something like that.
Yeah, they're going to want to list it the next go around. So most of these guys and gals are pretty buttoned up and are going to stay close to that deal throughout the process.
Yeah, common courtesy typically is in the marketplace. If the broker A sells you the property and then you've had it for 3 or 4 years, you lean into broker A to try to sell you the property. That's how they earn a living. That's how they earn. They give you into the next deal. They have to just keep on providing more inventory for you to buy, and you have to provide them inventory for them to sell. So number 10.
So Paul, like our discussion this week though with a newer broker in the market, it was, in the golden age of multifamily from 2012 to 2022, usually when you took the deal back to the listing broker, you were also walking away with a bag of gold and a Ferrari.
Yep.
But today, there's probably as many jump balls as any in terms of, okay, well, I got to sell this deal and I'm returning 30 cents or 20 cents on the dollar back to my LPs. How much loyalty am I giving to the guy who, I just lost grandma's $80,000?
Right.
Yeah.
So in normal markets, you'd lean into the person selling. In today's market, they sold you this deal 3 years ago. You may not be coming back to them. So it may be a jump ball. You're absolutely right. Number 10, overhype off-market listings. Call a deal off-market when it's actually been shopped around unsuccessfully for months, or use off-market branding as a manipulation tactic to simply exclusivity or urgency. Have you seen overhyping off-market listings? Have we seen off-market listings?
I mean, the biggest challenge with off-market is that there's no timeline really. So you as a buyer, unless you're pushing the case, the seller doesn't have to do anything, right? And I think off-market probably right now, it's more important if there's a maturity on the loan. So let's say the loan matures in the next 30 days, then at least there's some urgency there. But if a guy's got a Fannie Mae loan and it matures in 8 years, that seller has no urgency whatsoever to go right now and take a low ball offer. So you just have to understand the situation, and we can help you figure that out in terms of when the seller bought it, what type of debt they have on it, and then what options there are to really buy that deal and what pricing it is.
Let's kind of end the conversation on this one today. We've hit the top 10 things that are concerns, but I think we've opened it up a little bit to talk about what the reality is and how investment salespeople actually operate their business here in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. Next time we talk, because this is really probably is a two-part piece, is what I want to talk about is some red flags that we're seeing in the marketplace itself. I'm not going to talk about it this week. I'm going to talk about it next week. And I want to talk a little bit about red flags that we're seeing with investment sales groups. So I want you to listen to the podcast for next week, because I think it's going to be a great dynamic conversation about what we're seeing in the capital markets in investment salespeople. So James, any other comments before we say goodbye? Or Ricardo, any other additional comments about the 10 crappy things commercial real estate investment sales reps could do, probably not do in the Dallas-Fort Worth market to clients?
I would say come join us in the heat in August 22nd for the bus tour. And if you can't stand 100-degree heat, just come in October. It'll be a nice 75 degrees.
That's great. Final word, Ricardo?
No, I'm just sitting here. We're recording this on August 1st. We had we're rate locking a couple of deals Monday and Tuesday, so I'm pretty jazzed about the big drop in treasuries today. That we got the 10-year down 15 basis points, 5 years down over 20 basis points. So maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel for some folks.
From your lips to God's ears, no doubt about that. We certainly do appreciate James, the Professor Ang, spending some time with us today, and Ricardo Hinojosa, Thank you for spending some time with us. Look forward to talking with you guys next week, where we go a little bit more in depth on some of the things that investment sales and capital markets do. Again, I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.